Hey, this is the Fight Nerd here at Modell's in Manhattan with Mike Constantino, coach of AMA Fight Club. Mike, how's it going today?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Problem now. What are we doing here today? I know you guys are doing a little press workout. What's going on?
We have a little bit of an open workout that's for the fans in collaboration with Tap Out and Modell's. And Tap Out will now be selling their clothes here in the Modell's, especially a performance line, including Jim Miller's walkout T-shirt, which is the Everyday I Fight campaign. It's a really nice, comfortable T-shirt, and I think everybody should get one.
All right, now let's talk about the fight coming up this weekend, UFC 159. Your boy in there, Jim Miller against Pat Healy. Give us a quick analysis of what we can expect.
You can expect fireworks like you can in every Jim Miller fight. I mean, he's won some fight of the night bonuses, submission of the night bonuses. He's fireworks every time he fights, and he consistently gets better and better each and every fight, and I'm really excited to see this version of Jim.
This is Pat Healy's first fight coming out at Strikeforce. He's been doing very well in Strikeforce. What do you think about him as a fighter?
Pat's a great fighter. I mean, he fought multiple weight classes. He's a grinder. He's got good wrestling base. He keeps coming forward. He's one of those guys that'll never quit. I think it's a great test. I believe he was next in line to fight for the Strikeforce belt, so it makes sense he comes to the UFC, gets a top five fighter in Jim Miller, and I'm really looking forward to the fight.
You used a good word there. He's a guy that doesn't quit. Neither does Jim.
Sure doesn't. Neither of them do. That's a really good matchup, actually.
Yeah. So what are the implications of this match?
You need to win to move forward. We've been on the doorstep a couple times of title fights, and that's the ultimate goal, is to get that fight. And Jim wants to be the best in the world, and there's just the next step in order to make that happen.
Now, this past weekend, we saw one of Jim's previous opponents, Nate Diaz, take on Josh Thompson, and it was a loss for Diaz. Can you give us a little rundown of what went wrong for Diaz? What you think? What do you think about him and his performance?
It's not so much as what went wrong. I mean, because it's a fight. It's what went right, and what went right for Josh Thompson is he continued to circle towards the outside. He kept Nate's feet moving, never really let him sit to use his reach, and then Josh just waited and capitalized on his opportunity. He stunned him. He really set up that high kick very, very well, and you saw earlier in the fight, he was coming down low and then bringing the kick up high, and you even heard Nick Diaz in between rounds 1 and 2 tell him, watch out for the high kick. But when you're in the heat of the fight and somebody starts feinting and moving once they already land something, it's inevitable that when you get somebody guessing that sooner or later one of the two are going to land, and he just got caught. It happens.
Okay, now a few other fights this weekend at UFC 159. Let's just run down the card real quick. Get some Mike Constantino analysis going on here. Alan Belcher, Michael Bisping. This is a big fight in middleweight division. Good style versus style matchup also.
Very good fight. Belcher with the huge win over Paul Harris. Bisping is Bisping. I mean, he's been around. He's beaten everybody. We've fought both Michael Bisping and Paul Harris, with Dan Miller, and I know what all those guys are capable of. And Bisping's got great stand-up. He's got some good size. And like I said, Belcher's very well-rounded. Belcher always fights, very composed and very relaxed in there. I'm interested to see on how they're both going to attack it. Belcher's made some comments that he wants to come out with his hands down. Let Bisping punch him. I wouldn't recommend doing that. Bisping has a lot of power, and he's very athletic as well. It's really anybody's fight. Alan's got great stand-up. I think maybe the ground game and the athleticism of Alan could be the difference. But then again, if Mike Bisping wants to sprawl and brawl and keep the fight standing and grind them out against the fence, I think he can win that route too. So it's really who shows up that night and who performs.
Also on the card, a literally big heavyweight match here. Roy Nelson, Cheick, Kongo. These two guys are going to kill each other.
Cheick Kongo is so dangerous, and I've been in the locker room with him several times and warming up, and I've never heard the crack of the pads like I have when Cheick Kongo kicks him. I mean, he's a big, scary, intimidating guy who you do not want to get punched and kicked by. On the other side of that, Roy Nelson went the distance with Dos Santos, and we all know how good his striking is. Roy Nelson's a black belt. Roy Nelson has very good wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and he can take a punch and give a punch. So, I mean, that's a really good matchup as well. I mean, from a technical standpoint, I think, if Nelson puts him up against the cage and takes the fight to the ground, he wins. If he decides to stand with him, then he's entering the danger zone. So it again just becomes on execution. They both have the skill sets to win. It comes down to execution.
And now also on the undercard of the show, we have the women's fighting now. We have Sara McMann, Sheila, Gaff. That's an interesting fight also in the women's division. What do you think about that?
I don't know too much about her opponent other than the fact that she's a big puncher, and I know Sara's background. I was fortunate enough to meet Sara up in Montreal when Dan fought at 157, and Sara's, sweetheart, nice girl, and a really good grappling and, wrestling type background. So again, you have your proverbial striker versus grappler, and, I've never seen Sara stand up, so it's a matter of if the strike lands, if she can defend the takedown, or if she gets put on her back, meaning the girl that Sara's fighting, then it'll go Sara's way.
Excuse my ignorance, but does AMA currently have any female fighters on the team?
Yes, actually, I just had Jennifer J. Lo Lopez, who just won her last fight with a second-round armbar triangle combination. She's now 4-1 as an amateur fighter, and we have some other girls that are up and coming as well.
So you guys are obviously then big supporters of women's MMA.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not going to ask about Fallon Fox. We're just not going to go there. I know better. All right, let's just talk main event real quick. UFC 159, Jon Jones, Chael Sonnen.
Okay. Again, Jon Jones is probably the best fighter that any of us have seen. I mean, really, in the sport. I mean, he's not only beating former UFC champions, he's finishing them. You know, I mean, it's very, very impressive what he's been doing. Chael is one of my personal favorites. You know, Chael is a great guy. You know, he's a great fighter. He's a great wrestler. And he obviously is a great hype man as well. You know, I would never count Chael out of a fight just based on his wrestling and his pedigree, but I can never pick against Jon Jones. I mean, he's that good. It's amazing. And from a coach's standpoint, just to see how technically sound he is in all the areas, you know, utilizing his reach, his striking, his wrestling, his ground game. And now he's embracing the ground game and taking gi jiu-jitsu. And he's finishing former champion. So until that stops, it's impossible to side against Jon.
And last question, I know Dan just fought recently, Dan Miller. When is he going to be back in the cage, you think? And do you have an idea about what's next ultimately for him?
I'm not sure exactly what's next or when he'll be back. He just fought. As you know, the UFC has a real overloaded roster right now, and there's only so many fights that can happen, and there's plenty of guys that didn't even fight yet since Dan has fought. So, you know, we just have to sit back and wait and see what the opportunity is, but he'll be ready whenever the UFC calls.
Well, Mike, I wish you boys luck this weekend. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. Fight Nerd.